Like so many controversial stories that happen these days, most of what we are shown by the mainstream so-called respectable media is not the whole story. It's particularly acute with the Kyle Rittenhouse situation. If this is unfamiliar to you, or if the only place that you've heard a synopsis of what happened here was from something like CNN or MSNBC or the New York Times, I've read all those too, and I've read accounts from other media, and I can tell you just confidently, without a partisan motivation on my part, you don't actually know what happened. You've been misled because the coverage from the mainstream media has been entirely dishonest. What really happened here in this situation? There were protests and riots in Kenosha, Wisconsin. People were reacting. A lot of Black Lives Matter activists were reacting to a police shooting of a man named Jacob Blake. He wasn't killed, by the way. He remains paralyzed, but he wasn't killed. But because he was black, regardless of what he did, and I think there were some sex offenses at least charged in the Jacob Blake case. Because he's black, therefore, police are not allowed to take action against him because he is sacred. He's part of the sacred caste. People of color are sacred and beautiful and do not do wrong. It's like trans people. So Kyle Rittenhouse lived 20 miles away from Kenosha, Wisconsin. And he had family in Kenosha. He had a family, friends. I think his job was in Kenosha as well. This was a place that he commuted back and forth to. You know, when you get in the car and you drive 25 minutes to go to work, that's what Kyle was doing. You wouldn't know it, though, because he crossed state lines. You've heard that a lot recently. He crossed state lines, crossed state lines, crossed state lines, crossed state lines. If you live in the New York City area, anywhere in what they call the tri-state area, you're crossing state lines 2 or 3 times on the metro, on the train, over the bridges in your car to get to work. If you do something like this, when was the last time you thought of yourself as having crossed state lines this morning? Never, right? You know why? Because crossing state lines is not a thing. It's not. There are no checkpoints yet at state borders. Never have been. You don't need a special license. You don't need a pass. You don't need permission. You don't need to check in. It's not illegal to cross state lines. Doesn't make you bad. This is so annoying. This is so stupid. This is so stupid that we have to talk about this. They use this phrase to make it sound like Kyle Rittenhouse did a really, really bad thing he shouldn't have done. Cross state lines. The only time state lines comes up is when federal prosecutors need a hook to get involved with prosecuting a crime that would not otherwise be in their jurisdiction as federal law enforcement. Once you cross state lines with some sort of commerce or illegal activity, that gives them a legal hook to get around the constitutional situation that we live in, which is that states generally take care of these things and it's not a federal matter. That's all crossing state lines is. That's the only time in which it's operative, is when there's some sort of law enforcement matter. And you know what else? Kyle Rittenhouse didn't take a gun across state lines. Did you think that? I know. I thought it too originally. It was there being stored for him. Whether you approve of that or not, he didn't actually do the thing that many people are quite convinced he did do, and they're convinced of it because of what the media has told them. But that didn't happen. And whether you approve of what Rittenhouse did, whether you believe him when he said that he wanted to protect private property, I think that's much more believable than a lot of people do, because he had family, friends, and work colleagues in Kenosha. He was there all the time. This wasn't some foreign city. He wasn't an outside agitator. He's a 17-year-old kid. And when he got there, you would think from the reporting that he was on a mission, that he bought an assault rifle to cross state lines so that he could murder people. He wanted to murder people that cared about black people. That's why he did it, because he's evil, right? No. That didn't happen. He killed 3 men who threatened his life, and the jury agreed. They believed his claim of self-defense, and so do I. I didn't watch the entire trial. I wasn't in the courtroom, obviously. But I watched quite a bit of the live stream and quite a bit of commentary from sources other than the New York Times, NPR, CNN, and MSNBC. And he presented a convincing case, and it's right there on video. Let's talk about the 3 men that he killed, because you may not know very much about them. Very much truthful, that is. So Joseph Rosenbaum was a convicted child molester, convicted 5 times of anally raping boy children. That was Joseph Rosenbaum. You know, whenever there's an allegation that police were unnecessarily brutal to a black man and somebody brings up, you know, he was convicted for this, 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 and this, a lot of people say, has nothing to do with it. You don't have to be an angel not to be murdered. And they're right. But do they really feel the same way about guys like Joseph Rosenbaum, by the way, who's white? Is it really the case? Yeah, let me table that for a second, because there's a better way for me to get into it that's a little more clear. Rosenbaum was apparently just released from hospital. I couldn't get any more detail than that, but I'm guessing it's a mental hospital or a psychiatric ward. And he was being treated for what they call bipolar disorder. And you know about bipolar disorder, right? One of the most misdiagnosed. It's very often actually a cluster B personality disorder like borderline. And from the aggressive behavior, you can see it on video. That man went in there into that crowd just looking for a fight. Looked like he was ready to beat the living tar out of people. Didn't look like bipolar disorder to me. But what do I know? He chased Rittenhouse, Rosenbaum did. He chased him. That's why he got shot. He threatened him. Next one was Anthony Huber. Anthony Huber, in 2012, threatened his brother with a knife and strangled him. In 2013, he pleaded guilty to false imprisonment and 2 counts of strangulation. In 2018, he was sent back to prison. I think he violated probation by kicking his sister in the house that they shared together. That's Anthony Huber. Now, Gage Grosskroitz, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. He was the 3rd man. He's still alive. He was the one shot in the bicep. He was charged with prowling, felony burglary, and with hitting his grandmother in the face during a domestic dispute. And this is a guy who you can clearly see on video pointing his gun at Kyle Rittenhouse before Kyle threatened him. Kyle Rittenhouse shot him because the guy pointed a gun at him. Kyle Rittenhouse didn't walk up in there looking to kill people. The distance between how this kid has been portrayed and what actually happened is so large. But what's more disturbing about this to me is the why is the media so motivated to make this kid look like a monster, to take away any sympathy for him, to take away the concept of self-defense as if that didn't apply to him, as if he had no right to stop himself from being clobbered over the head with a skateboard. Anthony Huber was a friend of Jacob Blake, the person whose shooting by police was being protested by this. And you can see this on video. He takes a skateboard, which is a great big wooden board with metal on the bottom of it, and clobbered Kyle across the head with it. Wouldn't you defend yourself? If this were your kid, would you not expect him to defend himself? Why are we motivated to do this? Well, let's take an abbreviated tour of the reactions from the great and good all the way down to the hoi polloi on Twitter. So the first one we've got here is a picture of Anthony Huber, a drawing of Anthony Huber and Joseph Rosenbaum with a wreath of flowers around it. It's very clearly religious iconography. It looks like Mother Mary portraits. It looks like Catholic iconography. It's rendered in pastel to look like it was a painting. They're both made to look almost angelic, cherubic, right? And it says, Anthony Huber, Joseph Rosenbaum, was your property worth their futures? Aren't you a bad person? Aren't you bad for protecting private property at the cost of their lives? Because they're just beautiful young men, see? They got a lot of traction, that one. Here's New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio. He says on Twitter, Anthony Huber and Joseph Rosenbaum are victims. They should be alive today. The only reason they're not is because a violent, dangerous man chose to take a gun across state lines and start shooting people. To call this a miscarriage of justice is an understatement. And to call you a liar, Bill, would be an understatement. You're far beyond a liar. You're so brazen about it. No, again, correction. Kyle Rittenhouse did not take a gun across state lines. And again, crossing state lines is not illegal. Miscarriage of justice. They should be alive. Well, if they wanted to be alive, they shouldn't have tried to hurt him. They shouldn't have clobbered him with a skateboard. They shouldn't have pointed a gun. Well, that was Gage Grosskroitz. He's having a real hard time here figuring out who the victim and perpetrators are, aren't we? Representative Jerry Nadler had this to say on Twitter again. This heartbreaking verdict is a miscarriage of justice and sets a dangerous precedent which justifies federal review by the Department of Justice. Justice cannot tolerate armed persons crossing state lines, looking for trouble while people engage in First Amendment protected protests. It's not about First Amendment protected protests, Jerry. It was about assault and menacing Kyle with a gun, which was shown on video. Not about a protest, sweetie. State lines again. I think Robin Thicke should do a comeback song called State Lines. These people. Then we've got New York Attorney General Letitia James, who had this to say on Twitter. This is a dark day for our justice system. As a lawyer, I respect jury verdicts, but this is yet another reminder that our system needs to be uprooted and reformed. Uprooted. I'm surprised she didn't say dismantled. Really, Letitia? That's great attorney generaling. Now we're going to get into, let's see, do we have, well, we have some more great and good in here, but there's some hoi polloi too. Okay, so somebody named Dr. Emmett Brownie put up two pictures on Twitter. One of Kyle Rittenhouse snapped while he was carrying the gun that night, and the next one while he's getting his picture taken with somebody else. I don't know who it is. He says, Kyle Rittenhouse is a murderer, regardless of the unjust and corrupt proceedings. He would have been safer in prison. He doesn't have much time left. A life sentence would have given him a longer life. Everyone knows where he hangs out and who he hangs out with. That's barely veiled incitement to murder. And I saw a lot of this. I'm giving you maybe 10 examples in this segment. Hundreds, countless. There's probably thousands of these. I stopped looking. I mean, there were just tens and tens of thousands of tweets in threads like this. And the majority of them were lefties losing their mind and continuing to lie about what he did and who he was, Kyle Rittenhouse. Carly Beth was I'll give her credit. She didn't mince words. She said, I want to pour hydrochloric acid on Kyle Rittenhouse and kill his family to graft him new skin from his family members' bodies. Does that work? Kill his family. No, that doesn't work, but I guess it's the thought that counts. Then she also said, so who's going to take one for the team and murder Kyle Rittenhouse, hopefully in the next 24 to 48 hours, fingers crossed. Yeah, I know. I can hear you. I hear you out there. That's a troll. That's a troll. Yeah, I know. I know that's what you think. And it might be. Doesn't matter. There are people who say this stuff and mean it. And it's a troll isn't always exculpatory. Just saying. Colin Kaepernick, world's best football player who hardly ever plays football because he's too busy on a knee. He says, we just witnessed a system built on white supremacy validate the terroristic acts of a white supremacist. This only further validates the need to abolish our current system. White supremacy cannot be reformed. Fist pump. White supremacy. Where's this coming from? Where's the white supremacy? Oh, I forgot to mention this. You probably already figured this out if you didn't know it before you watched the show. All three men that Kyle Rittenhouse shot were white. But you see, even that is white supremacy. That's how insidious whiteness is. A response to Colin Kaepernick's tweet. There's always lefty left bots responding to these famous icons of the left, saying just ridiculous things. They're often very weepy. They're like, oh my God, I love you. You're such a hero. They're just really over the top. This one said, in response to Kaepernick, I pulled my kids out of school to teach them the importance of this trial. We just sat and cried on the couch for an hour. Where's the teaching? What are you crying over? What are you crying over? I don't understand. Now, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to have to go quick through these. Here we have the American Humanist Association. Great big think tank of people who are too much of a pussy to call themselves atheists. Headline. Humanists deeply saddened by not guilty verdict in Kyle Rittenhouse trial. The American Humanist Association is outraged by the verdict in the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse, which pronounced him not guilty on all charges. In August of 2020, Rittenhouse traveled from his home in Illinois carrying a semi-automatic rifle into... No, he did not carry the gun across state lines. Do you see how people keep repeating this misinformation? Blah, 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 blah. During a period of unrest over the shooting of Jacob Blake, a black resident, by a white police officer. Rittenhouse then killed blah, 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 blah. Didn't talk about anything about the activities of the guys he killed. Didn't talk about the fact that those guys threatened him and that this was self-defense. They just talked about Rittenhouse. The rifle that Rittenhouse brought to the protests in Kenosha was purchased by a friend since Rittenhouse was 17 and not legally old enough to purchase it, a reminder of the lack of necessary restrictions on gun laws in the United States. And here is a quote from Nicole Carr, their executive director. Make no mistake, this trial, the events that led up to it, and its outcome demonstrate that the hold that white supremacy has on our country. When white supremacists can opportunistically flock to a city grieving the shooting of a black resident, seek out violence, then kill people in the streets with impunity, our entire system lays bare its brokenness. Oh, Nicole. Jesus Christ. These people, nah, you can work that out for yourself. Then we had a raft of announcements from colleges to their student bodies and other members of the college community. Like this one from Chaffey College. I don't actually have a graphic for this one, so I'm just going to read you a couple of excerpts. Chaffey College in California. Dear students, by now you've heard about the verdict. Many of you may be feeling frustration regarding the outcome of this very heavily covered case. I write to you now to offer a measure of hope and perspective. Then it goes on and does another synopsis of what happened, making Kyle Rittenhouse look like he was seeking this out, but never mentioning the fact that these men threatened him. And it talks about how our justice system needs to be reformed. And may the families of Anthony Huber, Joseph Rosenbaum, and Gage Grosskroitz find peace and comfort during this difficult time. Well, it gets worse. Sonoma State University in California. Good evening, Seawolves. I'm reaching out to touch base with... Oh, my God, he got two of those in the same sentence. Reaching out to touch base with you. Following the verdict in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, at Sonoma State University, we are guided by our commitment to advancing social justice and building a culture of care. SSU is a safe and respectful place where engaged dialogue about racial injustice and social inequalities is encouraged. I want to let members of our Seawolf community... know that if you are feeling an emotional impact due to the outcome of this trial, I encourage you to utilize available campus resources. Next. Fitchburg, Massachusetts State University. Kyle Rittenhouse case processing spaces. This is from the Fitchburg State University Diversity Center. The Center for Diversity and Inclusiveness is creating space for our community. I'm sorry, I'm just going to do the voice. To process the not guilty on all counts verdict in the Kenosha, Wisconsin case, or Kyle Rittenhouse, an Illinois native, shot and killed two people protesting the wrongful death of Jacob Blake in 2020. What I'm not telling you is that Jacob Blake totally didn't die. He's super still alive, but I'm not going to tell you that. Anyway, let me go back to my statement. Kyle was acquitted of all charges in the case after driving to Wisconsin with an automatic rifle, and that totally never happened either. This moment has and will undoubtedly impact many in our community, so please see these spaces as an opportunity to discuss your thoughts, emotions, and reflections. Fill in the information below and know that we will provide virtual and in-person physical spaces. And they list them too. Are you ready? There's 1, 2, 3, 4. Student of color processing space, November 22nd. White student ally processing space, also November 22nd. Faculty and staff of color processing space, and a white faculty and staff ally processing space. I hope they put up signs so everybody can see white on one side and colored on the other. We've got the same thing from San Francisco State University, which wished the Gators good afternoon. Can I even read this? If I can't read this, you probably can't either. Oh my goodness, I swear they're all sharing the same brain. This one sounds like the other one. I'm writing to touch base with you following the verdict in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. Please know for any member of the San Francisco State campus community who may be triggered by the outcome of this trial, I encourage you to reach out to the campus resources available to all. Okay, that's enough, you guys. You totally have to take a break. I'll see you on the other side.
For more conversation on the dark and disordered psychology that shapes today's cultural and political left, subscribe to our weekly audio podcast on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Google Podcasts, and virtually anywhere else you get your podcasts. Let's learn to recognize these dynamics and call them what they are. Subscribe to Disaffected to learn how to break the spell.